Well, while they're putting off adulthood and all the responsibility that entails, they're being attracted to things like Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, and, God help us, transgenderism, which we will get to in a minute. But are these the kind of things that that young kids, teenagers, are they attracted to this because there are no longer things like church groups and sporting teams that previous generations gathered around?
Well, I'm not religious myself, but I do think that actually we're living in this post-religious age where up until recently, in this generation, or certainly the last one, when you started to try and make sense of life in adolescence, because childhood is magical and it's beautiful and the good guy always wins and the bullies will get their comeuppance. Then around about 13, 14, kids realise, oh my God, life isn't fair. The bullies are sometimes the most popular kid in the class and sometimes nobody gets their comeuppance and life just doesn't work out at all the way we had been taught it would. And so a lot of these kids look for meaning, they look for sense, they look for a solution. And I think, it's a noble aspiration. And so they might tend towards, let's say, Extinction Rebellion or becoming trans and creating their own person. I can see where it comes from. It comes from what I would argue is a noble drive to make the world better. But these days, why it's going this direction, it feels like religion isn't offered as a framework, that God's in his heaven and all's right with the world because there's a plan. Like I say, I'm not religious, but I think the lack of offering people a framework of somebody's in control and it's all going to plan. That is a lovely thing to hear. And when you're 14 and you're just going, life is awfully unfair. None of this makes sense. This is awful. Not to have that kind of option, I think is very frightening. And I can see why they go towards big solutions, big plans of what we need to do is sort out climate change and then we'll feel better. What we need to do is create ourselves in the image that we want, because that will make some sense of control over this chaotic world. And I can see why they want it. And I think it's a major gap in society that we aren't offering any of these teenagers a framework of understanding life. It's kind of like, there you go, nobody has a clue, nobody's in charge, nobody knows anything that's really going on. Look after yourself. And I think that's really hard.
It is hard. That is a very, very difficult world in which to grow up. I heard Jordan Peterson say the other day, in the context of advice to young people, pursue the things that will help you get through periods of suffering because it's coming. And Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion and all that gives them is a fleeting moment of moral clarity that in the long term doesn't help their own lives, does it?
Well, it could certainly give them a fleeting moment of meaning, and for some people it gives them a long-term moment of meaning. It does feel very externalized, like it's out there, as opposed to it's the chaos in my head and my kind of fretting about how is my life working out. But you know that lovely phrase, life is what happens when you're making other plans. We put our energy into whatever gives us meaning in that given moment. And so long as that is something that makes the world a better place, it's good. It's a good thing. In this world where it's very individualistic, there's a feeling of an awful lot of people are busy kind of self-righteously preaching to other people rather than getting their own shop in order. There's a very strong vibe of us and them, villains and heroes. You're on one side or the other. I know it's a cliche, but we've become so polarized. You're one side or the other, rather than thinking we're in a massive gap of meaning. It's very, very individualistic. Everybody's trying to find their own way, and it's making us pretty unhappy and disconnected and incredibly conflict driven. And that seems so unfortunate. It really does.